So thanks everybody for showing up to the How to Leave Your W-2 and to transition successfully, right? Because it's one thing to leave and it's another thing to actually make that transition and make a smooth landing and achieve the life that you are looking for. So during this time, just a little overview real fast before I introduce our amazing panelists is that I'm going to go ahead and ask the panelists a few questions. We're going to learn the steps that they took to leave their W-2, how they created that runway for them, so that you can get a snapshot. It looks different for everyone. We're going to learn about the support that they received along the way, maybe from a partner, maybe from a coach. So they're going to be different. That's going to be different for everybody. And then also we're going to learn about, we're also going to be learning about the obstacles that they faced along the way, how they overcame those. And most importantly to you, towards the end, we're going to be talking about what do you need? What is in their opinion, right? They've already done this. So in their opinion, what do you need so that you can make this transition in your life? At the very end, we'll have a Q&A session for you. So just one more little bit of housekeeping. If you are just coming in, if you please make sure that you are on mute, that would be fantastic. And another item of housekeeping is, it is virtual, and so oftentimes you can feel a little bit alone and as if you're talking to a screen when it's virtual. So if you are here, please participate. You are here, so please do participate. Please make sure that you are, hitting the little reactions in Zoom at the bottom so people can see those and be encouraged. It's really nice to know that what you're saying is resonating with people. So you can do that through the reactions. You can also do that through the chat box. So just something as simple as like, heck yeah, or, me too, or that's so great. Just anything that you can do just to keep the fuel and the momentum going. Believe it or not, it's absolutely extraordinary when a group of participants does that. And I think that you realize, if you don't already know me, I'm Julie Hawley. I talk a mile a minute. I am founder of 3 Keys Investments. I am host of the Conscious Investor Podcast, and I am also a high performance coach. I love mindset, and I love supporting people in pursuing every fullness in every part of their lives. I'd like to go ahead and introduce these amazing panelists. I'm so blessed to be able to call some of you guys friends. And let's just go through. I'm going to go based off of where you are on my screen. So thank you, Steve. If you wouldn't mind giving an introduction, Steeve Breton.
Yes. So Steeve Breton of Velocity Capital. I was an IT manager in biotech and banking industry for 25 years. And then I finally left my W-2 job, a big part of that because I wanted to stop the long commutes, 1 hour and 15 minutes each way.
Yeah, if you commute, just drop that down. I want to know what your commute times are. Drop it in the chat box. Lee Yoder, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here, Julie. I am the founder of Threefold Real Estate Investing and the host of the Threefold Real Estate Podcast. I was a physical therapist for 8 years, and I left to do real estate investing full time about 1 year ago.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Lee. Jens, so happy to have you.
Likewise. Well, I mean, I'm pretty much a mirror image of Steve. So I was a 27-year career in IT. Ended up in IT management in actually a Native American tribe. And I have been away from my W-2 job since April of this year. So it's still a relatively new transition for me.
So excited for you. Suzy, so happy to have you all the way from England.
Thanks. I'm excited to be here. So my name is Suzy Sevier. I am the co-founder of Adventurous Real Estate Investors and the host of the Adventures of a Real Estate Investor podcast. I had been in accounting or program management for about 8 years, and I left my W-2 at the end of August of this year.
Congratulations. So exciting. Lisa, love to have you here.
Thanks for having me. So my name is Lisa Hylton. I'm based in Los Angeles. I also left my W-2 in April of this year. I was 14 and a half years in accounting, so taking care of all different types of funds. And yeah, so I'm the founder of LisaHylton.com, and I am the host of the Level Up REI podcast.
I just want to say I'm super grateful to have other women podcasters present. It's super fun. So high five. Thank you, ladies. And Camilla, man, I'm so excited. Camilla and I have done a lot of partnership things together. So thank you for joining us on this, and high five to your recent transition. I should let you introduce yourself.
Hey everyone, I'm Camilla. I'm founder of Steady Stream Investments, and I was in HR as an HR business partner supporting tech teams, and I left that 8 weeks ago.
Not that you're counting or anything like that. There wasn't a countdown. Fantastic. If you are, paying attention, tracking, and you can safely do so, please let us know what career you are transitioning from. And just one more bit of housekeeping before we hop into our questions is please make sure that you are muted. Please engage along the way. It makes it so much more fun, and it helps us know what's resonating with you and how to refine our questions. So let's dive in. The first question we want to ask the panelists is, what specific steps did you take? What specific steps did you plan to leave your W-2, and what did your runway look like? Please include your timeline. And they already have these questions, but I want to give everyone the context of this question so that you're really, what you're listening for, right? Include your timeline. How long did it take? Did you stick to your timeline? And Steve, you're like the happiest W-2 leaver, right?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's when you're still within that first year of having left, it's pretty exciting. Yeah, so I took a very methodical approach. I've been a project manager forever, and also very financially oriented. So I did all the financial planning. I modeled out the business growth that I thought I could do in this business as a multifamily syndicator. And I just kind of put all the puzzle pieces together, and I said, okay, I'm going to give myself 3 years to execute. And then basically 2 years in, I had done a few deals. I also realized as a real estate professional that I wasn't going to be paying taxes, nor would my wife be paying taxes on her income. And that made a big difference in my analysis as well. So yeah, that's my plan. Left 2 years in.
That's really interesting. 2 questions before we go on to our next panelist to answer this question. And that is, how were you, I try to hear the questions that people probably have. For you specifically, Steve, how were you able to calibrate, well, I think I can accomplish this in this period of time? What was the track record that you were basing that off of so that you could project forward?
So I had some local properties. So I certainly wasn't afraid of real estate. The thing that made me the most nervous was I going to be able to find deals? So, I wouldn't say it was based on a track record at all. I just kind of put goals out there. We're going to get into like having coaching or some sort of support network, but I had all of that around me as well. And so I just had some confidence.
That is awesome. Confidence goes a long way. And by the way, he's fantastically awesome. So if you haven't checked out velocitycap.com, you need to go there. Maybe not at this moment, but just open the browser tab so that it's ready at hand. Lee, go ahead and tell us a little bit about how you prepared for your transition.
Yeah, maybe one unique step that I took, that other people could follow or think about was I talked to a buddy of mine that was already full-time in real estate and was kind of asking him, hey, how can I maybe transition that? And he asked me if there was any way I could do my current job from home. Like I said, I was a physical therapist, but at the time I was actually doing no physical therapy. I was kind of climbing the corporate ladder, just kind of doing the corporate ladder thing. So he asked me if I could work from home so that, and have more flexibility and start doing real estate as a side hustle. And for me, the answer was no. So what I decided to do toward the end of 2016 was to get out of the corporate job. I was like a clinical director, kind of moving toward a director of operations role. And I really enjoyed that work, but didn't enjoy like the family, the time with my family, the how it was consuming me, those type of things. So I left that job and went back to being just a home health physical therapist, where I really controlled my time, had a very flexible schedule, probably barely worked 40 hours a week. So I had a lot of time then to do real estate as a side hustle, whereas with my job climbing the corporate ladder, I did not. So that was a big step for me, was making that transition. So I like to share that part because today, I think due to COVID, more people than ever are working from home. And maybe other people are finding themselves with that flexibility. So maybe that gives you a chance to take that first step, which is maybe starting with real estate as a side hustle, to try to get it going a little bit, build some confidence, maybe get your first deal, get involved in the first deal. Maybe you just start the coaching program, but you start taking a couple steps while you're still there. That certainly helped me.
Okay, can we just high five you for an amount of humility that it would take? What was that like taking, basically, it sounds like you did a downgrade on your job. Am I hearing that correctly?
Yeah, for sure. I just had a bigger vision, and like a lot of people on here, I think I just decided that family, time with family, for me, faith is very important. So there's a lot of, that goes along with that. Like, I just decided that was more important. But then, I mean, in truth, I just got really excited about real estate. Read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, started listening to podcasts and just got really excited and thought, I think I felt like this is kind of more what God created me to do, is to follow this. So that passion allowed me to, definitely take a step back. I mean, I took probably like a 30% pay cut. Now that was still making enough to support our family and things like that. So it wasn't like we had to eat ramen noodles, for a time or anything. We were fine, but it was a step back. But I think I just had a big enough why, like a lot of people on here, and a vision for it that made me want to do it anyway.
Okay, this is amazing. So Steve says, hey, I was confident and you've got passion. I'm just noticing like already a little trend here of a character trait that we need as we're trying to make these type of transitions in our life. And if you didn't hear that, I'm curious, on a scale of 1 to 10 for everybody in the audience, please drop scale of 1 to 10. Would you downgrade your current position if you were confident and passionate that it would take you to the next level? I'm really curious who would be willing to do that. So scale of 1 to 10, 10 is heck yeah. And let's dive over. Jens, let's hear about your transition and how you created a runway.
Well, I love that. Love that. I forgot to mention my company is Open Doors Capital. I'll put my contact information in there in a second. Yeah, so I actually, I got sent home in March of 2020 because of COVID, right? Everybody started working from home, like I'm sure a lot of people experienced. I was in IT, so it wasn't really a problem for us, not like Lee, who was, a hands-on type practitioner. I got sent home. And I know the next question is going to talk about support, but I also hired my coach around that time. And we actually worked together on this plan. My boss knew I was on the way out, but I hadn't really set a deadline. I hadn't been as intentional around the exit as I, in retrospect, maybe should have been. But I had made some vague commitments to myself and also to my wife about where we were going to move and things like that, which meant I had to kind of leave my job. But then this idea came up, well, maybe there is a transition to go to part-time. So you mentioned, are you willing to, reduce your income? And I suggested that to my boss and said, hey, can I go part-time? Can we do an exit? Because I felt like I wanted 2 reasons. I wanted to leave them in a good place and I wanted to transition roles and responsibilities. So this gave me a time. It was longer than it should have been. It was like 8 months. I should have done it quicker, but never mind. So it was 8 months of working part-time. So I got 2 days back when I was able to start building up my real estate, like really accelerated, because I didn't have the cash flow to really quit and actually survive on it, if you will. So I was able to build up my cash flow through my real estate in that 8 months and really accelerate things by getting 2 days back. So that started in like summer of 2020, that process, that 8 months. And I was like, oh yeah, I'll have 2 extra days a week. Like those 2 days were filled up with real estate and just all these amazing things happened. So I think, people may hold back and said, oh, I don't have the income to be able to leave and everything. But once you get rid of this 40, 50, 60 hour a week, this quote unquote distraction, you can accelerate your growth so much quicker. And I realized that man, I should have done it quicker and earlier, but that's a lesson I learned, and I'm trying to kind of relay to other people that there is an opportunity cost as well by staying in your job for too long. So it was a nice long runway, and it ran out in April of this year. So
did it really run out though? You were ready to take off.
Oh yeah, it should have. That's right. I just took off. It should have been 6 months, not 8 or 9. That was a little bit too long in retrospect, but I learned that lesson, I guess.
I love it. I thank you for your transparency on that. I want to point out in the chat box, I love the active conversation. And Steve mentioned you passed up 2 promotions over 2 years. I just wanted to duck back to that because it's on this topic right here.
Yeah, it's funny because I'm also a coach, and sometimes I'm coaching people and they're like, I've got the possibility of taking this promotion. Should I take it? And it's hard for me to gauge that because I need to know how ready they really are to leave. What's their likelihood of success? Because I don't want to have them not take that promotion if that's really the best thing for them. But for me, I was like, there's no chance in hell I'm taking a promotion. I know I'm leaving in 2 years. And if I take that promotion, I'm now having to prove myself at another level, different people reporting to me, different set of responsibilities. I was not going to give up a second of the time that I had to build this business to meet my goals.
Love it. Almost to burn the boats, not really burn the boats totally, but I mean, I'm not moving forward anymore. I'm not moving forward here. I'm not going to entertain, just there's a wall. Yeah. Focus. You're amazing with focus, by the way. Role model status. Suzy, so happy to have you here. Tell us about your runway. You are recent, August, so this is really fresh on your mind.
Yeah, so I mean, the reason it happened is because we were my husband and I were taking down our first real estate deal, and the amount of time that we had between our W-2s in real estate, like the outside time, was 0. And it was just burning our candle really, really thin. Like we were waking up, 4 or 5 in the morning, doing real estate, doing work from 9 to 5 or 9 to 6, and then coming home and doing real estate. And the thing is that when it's like 6 o'clock in the UK, it's still 6 or noon in our market. So like we still had the whole night to actually still talk to people because people were still responding to emails and stuff. So all of that time, like once we took our first deal down, it was like, okay, it was almost perfect timing. My work was like, we want to start talking about bringing you onto a different project. And, Michael had just looked at me and been like, I don't think so. I don't know how you're going to tell them no, but we're going to have to start to tell them no, like when your main project ends in August, then so will you. And so that was like, those 2 were the runway.
Do you feel like that was, did you feel any level of responsibility? I haven't asked anyone else this question, but was there any level of responsibility to your employer to follow through and finish with a project or something? Or
yeah, so that's like how I picked my timeline. Like when the project ended, I knew that that's when I was going to be done. And I felt like I had to end the project because of that responsibility. I just didn't want to drop off because like as the pretty much project manager, if I left at the very end, I just feel like that would say a lot more about my character, and I would feel just guilty. And I was like, okay, if I went into this knowing I was going to end it, I can't just say like, oh, I'm going to let something else, even though I knew it was better. It was still like, I can do this till a couple more months. We can do this.
I appreciate that. And when you were talking about that, I was thinking character, right? I mean, it speaks volumes about who someone is when they see something across the finish line. So that's just so commendable. I love it. For everyone in the audience, I'd love for you to drop in. If you're working on a project right now, I want to know when that project ends. Okay, drop it in the chat box. We're all professionals. You're working on something. When's that project going to end? Could that be your runway? Lisa, you have an amazing runway story.
Yeah, compared to the other folks, I don't think I was as calculated, to be quite honest. I knew for a while that I knew for a couple of years that I wasn't planning on staying in corporate America for the rest of my life. I think once I took this last position that I had, I knew I wasn't going to stay, but it was just a matter of like finding the right vehicle in terms of a business in order to make the transition out. And that took time. So because of that, like going back to some of your questions, like for me, like largely just saving, like working high income jobs that enabled me to save really good money. And while many of my coworkers were buying homes, I was still like investing in real estate syndications myself, which then enabled me to then have the passive investor experience, number one, and then number two, be able to be in a position where those investments were actually making money. And like, so there was some of that. So when I got to the point where I was like, okay, you know what, maybe I can do this. I went ahead and took the plunge. The other part for me is like, in terms of Runway, having sufficient savings was really important. So just making sure that I had at least a year to 2 years of savings, and like just knowing as an accountant, just knowing what my burn rate is, and knowing that you need to take risk. And by and large, building a business also takes money. So you need to really think about that as you are taking these next steps. But that's what I would say.
That's there's a lot of insight there. And for those of you, like scroll through the chat, I'm dropping podcast links to each of our amazing panelists. They've all been on the Conscious Investor podcast, or Ask Me How I Know, which is what it was formerly known as. And Lisa, I'm going to dive into something that I know that you didn't touch on that I think might be helpful for a lot of people. And that is, and correct me if I'm wrong, you took a downgrade on your living space. Is that correct?
Yeah.
You didn't buy the house like everybody else.
Right.
You weren't buying all the toys. And you even went, tell us a little bit more.
Yeah. So about 2 or 3 years before this is before I even thought of like this business, syndication business. As I said, like I had already been thinking that I wasn't going to stay in corporate America for the rest of my life. But it was just a matter of like just finding the right vehicle. So I decided, I was living in like a Class A luxury apartment building. I decided to leave from where I was living and find another apartment that was more economical. Like a $600 decrease in my rent on a monthly basis. But, that comes with the flexibility of, your current situation. Not everyone is in that situation to make that kind of decision, but that helped a lot, because then that reinforces you understanding what your burn rate is. And to live in a very expensive city like Los Angeles, which I still live here. So a part of it was like, when I was calculating my numbers, is like, how much money would I need to have coming in for me to continue to live here comfortably? So, yeah.
I love it. A lot of people, thank you for your honesty, your transparency on that. Kind of like some of those humble steps that Lee took, and Steve passing up opportunities to grow, right? And Suzy, not taking on that next project. There is a cost that, to leaving your W-2. And when you make that decision, and you know where you're headed, you can make some of those decisions in a better way. So if you want, drop in the chat box. I'd love to know, would you downgrade your living status? I can think of 3 other investors off the top of my mind that have made those changes to create that runway for their transition. So Camilla, so excited. I think you are the freshest W-2 leaver out of the group.
Yes, although not by much. Everybody's kind of left within the year, right? Yeah. So you asked about Runway. What was my runway? What did my runway look like? I actually really loved my job that I was working in. It was really exciting. It was fun. I got to build new tech cultures, and I got to, I got to really go in and get to know the tech world, and I liked it a lot. Well, my employer decided that they wanted to move me to a new state, right? So we were living in Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia at the time, and my employer moved me to Phoenix, Arizona, and it was a night and day difference, right? The environment in Atlanta was upbeat, exciting, fun. And I had a lot of freedom to create that. And the environment in Arizona was the exact opposite. I literally went to an office that felt like I was in a dungeon. There were no windows in my where I was working, and I was just in this cave, I felt like. And it was that exact same time that I had always been doing real estate. So I've been a real estate investor for a long time, but it had been a side hustle. And it had been, there was a point when it was, I guess it was side hustle because I was home with my 5 children and building that business. And then, got my MBA and went back into corporate America. And so I'm sitting here thinking, this job sucks. I'm in a place where the job sucks. My environment sucks. And I know that this corporate job is not what's going to get me to where I want to be. And so I started trying to figure out, okay, I really need to invest in real estate. And at that time, I didn't really have the plan to leave, right? I wasn't looking to leave my W-2. I was just looking to increase my wealth building opportunities. And I knew I had to level up to multifamily to do so because the single family stuff just wasn't getting me there. So started looking into large multifamily. And meanwhile, my employer moved me again to now Dallas. We're living in Dallas now. and it's better environment here. But as I was really starting to work on building my multifamily syndication business and growing those muscles and, all these new concepts and terms, things were starting to go well. And I closed my first deal. And I talked to my mentor and she's like, you should quit your job. And I said, wait, what? Quit my job right now? I only closed one deal. And she's like, Camilla, you just don't know what's on the other side, right? You have the potential to do so much. And when you can devote 100% of your time to it, you're going to wish you had done it earlier. Right. Well, I said, okay, I get it. I can see where you're coming from, but I don't feel safe yet. I don't feel secure yet because I'd only closed one deal. So I reached out to another real estate friend of mine who had recently left his job. And I just said, hey, what was your metric? And he said, well, my metric was 70%. So when he replaced 70% of his income, he decided that was the metric that was that he had proved the issue, that he could do it. Right. And so I took that to heart. And that's the goal I set for myself. I said, okay, once I have replaced 70% of my income, and it was a 6-figure income, right? It wasn't like a small income that I was trying to replace here. Then I will allow myself to exit and go full on into real estate and really, let it go. And so that's exactly what happened for me is I worked hard in the real estate business. It was a lot of work, right? Because I was doing my W-2 job, which was, just the nature of an HR job is that you're being pulled in 1,000 directions in all the time. And so not a lot of downtime, but then I would just work mornings and noon, lunch hour, and nights in building the syndication business. And I got to the point where I felt safe enough to leave the W-2 job. And I was having so much fun doing real estate that I wasn't having that much fun in HR. And I was just really ready for something, ready for a change. And also, similar to the other panelist stories, was my boss kept having these career conversations with me, like, well, what do you want to do next? And where do you want to go? And of course, in HR, that's our job, is to have career conversations to make sure people feel engaged and that they have runway to grow in the company. And every time I was like, I'm good. I like where I am. I had no desire to grow. And that frustrated her so much because she just, I'm trying to help you grow, Camilla. Like, come on, what do you want to do? I'm like, well, maybe I want to have an international experience. And, but that won't happen for 3 years. And so it was just easier to just stay where I was and just do my job well, but not try and grow in an area that I really wasn't that passionate about anymore.
Love it. Love it. Oh my goodness. This is all pure gold. And I just want to thank everyone for, like answering this question, going back. Sometimes when you hear people answer a question, you end up wanting to add a little more. So, if there's something that any of the wonderful panelists would like to add, just a brief addition, please go ahead and feel free to unmute yourself and do so.
I like, it seemed like Lisa was talking more about having some savings. I mean, and then like knowing her burn rate. And then Camilla was talking about replacing her income with real estate. And I think, you can kind of do either or, you can kind of do a mix. I was like really trying to get to the point of replacing my income, but then was doing real estate as a side hustle and sold some and ended up, realizing all that equity and having a lot of savings and kind of going more a little bit what Lisa was talking about, like having enough savings and then just realizing how much of that we're going to burn through and realizing we had a few years to go at this full time. So I think kind of be either or, maybe it's kind of a mix of both. Maybe you get a little bit of income going, but you also have a lot of savings. So you realize, hey, I'm only making $20,000, $30,000 a year with the portfolio I have now, but I have, this much saved up. So I can live off of this with my 20, 30 for a couple years. And because to me, depending on what kind of job you have, I always felt like if, once I left, if it didn't work out, I could go back and just get my old job back or one very similar, right? I mean, at least I'm in healthcare and those jobs are going to be there. So I mean, it was like, I had a few years of savings. So it was like, I want to go for it. I want to do it now. I just felt like I couldn't wait long enough. I was being very impatient because I was so passionate about leaving. So I couldn't be patient enough to build up, replacing my income with my real estate. And we ended up selling. So we like sold our cash flow, but that gave me this big runway then to leave. And like Lisa was talking about, kind of understanding my burn rate, like, okay, I've got a few years to make this work. If it doesn't, I go back to my job. But by then I felt like, well, I'll at least own something. I'll at least have some real estate. And now I'm going back to my job. And then, maybe it's a different path than I expected. But I think you can kind of use the savings and realizing your burn rate and then also trying to build up real estate enough to supplement that. It might be a little mix of both.
And you might be, thank you, Lee. Those are all that's very insightful and helpful. Oftentimes I hear a lot of people that they want so much security, such a high level of security and confidence that it makes it impossible to make that transition. So that's really important to keep in mind. And if you're just walking in, please feel free to make sure that you are on mute so that we can hear everyone well. Let's go on to the next question. Did you have outside support from a spouse, a partner, a mastermind community, a coach? And if so, who supported you? How did that affect your progress? And Steve, we've had you off mic for a while. We need to hear from you again.
So I had all of the above. So I'll start with the spouse, which is, I think, the most important if you have one. My spouse pretended to be on board. She was pretty supportive, as much as she needed to. She kind of checked the box. But still, I was making a really good income. Health insurance was on my employer. My wife was self-employed, so we didn't have any other option there. So the idea of me leaving, there was certainly a lot of things swirling around in the back of her mind. We never really talked about it that much. She just kind of supported me, and I kind of pretended I had all the support I needed, and we moved on. But as sorry, my dog here, hold on a second. As I grew into this role in my business and starting to do deals and started getting really serious about it, and also with the coaching that I was getting, right? I had a coach. And a lot of what happens when you have a coach is your mindset changes. You actually become a different person if you have a good coach. And as I started to become a different person, at some point my wife says, I'm not even sure who you are anymore. And I was like, oh, okay. Like I'm literally like pulling away from her as I move on to this thing and not taking her along for the ride. So yeah, we had to hit a few bumps in the road at that point, needed to kind of reassess things. Slow down a little, make sure we were completely on the same page. Showed her the model, like this is what it's going to look like once I actually get there. Again, without proof, it's not always that easy, but that certainly helped. And then once you get the first deal or two going, so the coach helped with that. I did join a mastermind group as well, a paid mastermind group. And that's actually one of the places where I found several deals. So all of those things help. You have to surround yourself with the right people.
Thank you. I really appreciate the vulnerability on the transitions that happen with the relationships in our life, because those are real. And if you are planning on making this ginormous change, it will change you. And I just appreciate you saying that out loud, because it's something that people need to be prepared for. And being aligned along the way is paramount, absolutely paramount.
Yeah.
Any other insight you want to add on that about the coaching or your mastermind that you participated in?
No, I would say, again, it's an investment. So if you really are serious, then it's nothing to drop $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 to get into the right groups and make sure that you're actually growing in the right direction.
I love it. What was one thing that you would say really proved to you that you were in the right place, that you chose the right coach, that you chose the best mastermind for who you are?
I interviewed like 5 or 6 coaches. And the one that I went with was just the one that I felt was really what I needed more. Like I already had the understanding of how to underwrite, understanding of managing properties. What I needed was someone who was really going to motivate me and to get rid of some of those limiting beliefs that I have. So I picked somebody who was particularly strong in that area. And that's exactly what I needed. So, the second I started, I realized that it was really changing the way I thought and helping me to kind of expand my mind and kind of shed those limiting beliefs, which was a really big deal for me.
That's huge. I can't even imagine Steve with any limiting beliefs, by the way. Like
nuts. Like I said, you become
nuts.
A totally different person through this journey.
Oh, that's so exciting. Thank you so much. Lee, how about you? What was your support system like?
Yeah, I always say, like, I would have done the paid coaching and joined one of the coaching programs, mastermind programs. Got lucky with the local RIA group here in Cincinnati, Ohio, where I'm located. Our local RIA is strong, and we had a guy running an apartment focus group. So I started that toward the end of 2018, and he was just teaching us how to underwrite. So I just started doing that. I started, looking on LoopNet for deals and just underwriting them just for practice. And I'm, going back to him, asking him, on a couple, like, hey, here's what I think this property's worth, should I offer, what do you think? And just getting some positive feedback. So it was just giving me confidence to start taking that first step. So that was really big for me. And then, once I did actually start making offers, having him right there with me. And I ended up giving him a little piece of my first deal so that he would, stay on it with me. And I felt like I kind of owed him something. And so that was he was my coach. And I really think, once you get one, the second one is much, much less daunting and scary. So he ended up being a coach for me. He was a free coach, but I ended up paying him with equity in the first deal, which I was very happy to do. I'll second what Steve said, and I think I had a similar experience with me. My wife, she didn't necessarily pretend to be on board. It was more like she felt God calling her to try to support me in this endeavor. So it was definitely a struggle for us as well, because it is very scary. I mean, everything, I see people putting into the chat. I'm more like, I'm very much, I'll jump and build a parachute on the way down, but I'm not married to someone like that. And so I need to, honor her. I feel that God is calling me to honor how he created her as well. So there was a lot of back and forth, and I would have left a lot earlier, and I would have, done things differently, but it's been great how God's worked it out for us in our relationship. Some of me slowing down, I have no doubt has avoided some, making some mistakes. And so we've done less deals than I probably would have done, because my wife has kind of slowed us down, but we've moved quicker toward the goal, which is, bigger multifamily. We flipped a house, but we only flipped one house because I told her, hey, this is what real estate's like. And we flipped a house, and she's like, this doesn't seem at all like what you told me. This seems like another job. And I'm like, yeah, it basically is. We made some money, but basically made up the pay cut I took from the corporate job when I left that. And so it was like, all right, well, let's not do another flip. And if it had been just to my own devices, I would have done, probably several flips and got a couple going on at a time. And, realize 10 flips down the road that this isn't investing, it's not passive income and things like that. So she was definitely a big part of my support system. And I think it's good to have somebody on your team that's a little more calculated and kind of thinking through things a little bit more. But then you do need somebody, and Steve brought up the coach, and you know, my coach to the Rio was the same way. Like, you do need somebody that says, just go, like you've got to jump. I mean, somebody, if it's you or if it's your partner or if it's a coach, I think you're going to need somebody to help push you, because it is scary. It is a big jump, but you do have to jump at some point. You got to jump in if you're ever going to do it.
Oh, that's fantastic. Lee, I hope I'm not overstepping my bounds, but I should just say people should connect up with you and Hannah, because the gift that you guys give, you know, just in conversation, and, you know, we've had some conversations, you know, as couples, and it's very insightful. And it's sometimes along the journey, you can use one of those me too. And for some of us, there are a lot of women that are here. And if you happen to be the ambitious woman in a partnership and in a marriage, this role might be reversed. And so it's really helpful to be able to, you know, talk to people who have walked this path before you and can share how they navigated that. So I would highly recommend connecting up with Lee and his awesome wife, Hannah. Camilla, can you tell me a little bit about the support system that you created?
Yeah, sure. So when I decided to invest in multifamily, to level up, right, to get into multifamily, I did join a mentoring program, but I didn't join one of those that was an overarching program, like a big one that taught you every single thing. I joined one that was specific to raising capital, because I looked at the roles, I kind of understood myself, I knew who I was, and I knew what my which role would be the best for me. And so that's what I joined. So I had that mentor in place to really teach me all the things about raising capital and joining with other teams and co-sponsoring and things like that. The other thing is I do have a super supportive husband, and he's been amazing. He's always happy to let me go and fly and try all these things and do. And so I'm very blessed to have that in my life. My kids are great supporters of me too. And then the other fun thing is that as you really dive into this journey and you open yourself up to more networking opportunities, which is something that I neglected in my first 15 years of investing, was actually networking with other real estate investors. We just did it on our own. We did everything ourselves. But now that I've opened myself up to networking opportunities, I've found some really great friends in this business, and people that I can rely on, that I can text at a moment's notice, and I can celebrate wins with. I can, look for comfort with when I'm facing some challenges in the business. People that get me, right, that understand what I'm going through, that love real estate as much as I do, and so it's really important to have those people in your life. And for me, as kind of an introvert, I don't need a lot of them. I don't need hundreds of them. I need 2 or 3, and I have those 2 or 3. And then the other thing I did was I knew the transition was going to be bumpy for me, the transition from W-2 to full-time entrepreneur, because I was used to such a busy schedule, right? Like my calendar was full day in, day out. People were contacting me all the time. And I knew that as soon as I exited that and went to complete white space on my calendar, that might be hard for me. And so I did hire a coach to help me through that and to help me understand and just to talk to you about it and just work through those bumps. And it was rough in the beginning. The transition was rough for me as I was trying to figure out, well, now what do I do with my day? How do I plan my day? How do I make sure that I'm working on the most important things and not just squirreling my time away, doing things that maybe are not that feel like I should be doing, but maybe I shouldn't be doing. So there was a lot of that too. So definitely need a support system around you. And with people who will celebrate with you and then who will support you when you're feeling pretty crummy.
Thanks so much. I think that you hit on something that's really important, and that is Camilla is a high performer and she's super ambitious. And yet I hope everyone, because I think that if you're here, you can resonate with that. You want more and you're willing to give more. And yet Camilla's like, whoa, I need a little outside coaching support on the other side, because I don't want to waste my time and I want to make sure that I'm using it well. And that's an interesting dynamic, because a lot of times we'll think, well, hey, we know how to do things. We're very successful over in our W-2. So wouldn't we just apply that over here? And yet sometimes during that transition, it can get a little dicey as you're learning new terrain. So thanks so much for sharing that. I'd like to open it up. Jens, Lisa, Suzy, would either of you like to, any of you like to join in on this?
I mean, I can add a little bit to it. So, I mean, I think, the support, I had a very supportive wife in this, and she was like, when are you going to quit? Right. I have a job. I can cover health insurance and all that stuff. So she was pushing me harder than I was pushing myself, actually. So that was, bless her heart for that. So, I mean, that was pretty amazing. And then, as Julie, what you said around having a coach, right? I mean, there's no question. I'd probably still be in my W-2 job had I not hired that coach, that almost a year and a half, 2 years ago now, because he pushed me and he made me see, that I was, my fear around security and everything else was not well placed. There's so much more security in running your own business, because you can pivot and do things as life changes, as the environment changes and so forth. So, great support from my wife, great support from my coach that really helped me do that. And then, various other masterminds and groups that I belong to. But I really feel like we need a group of like-minded people to support us and see what's possible and push us forward. So, I mean, that's kind of the things I wanted to add to the great comments the other panelists have already shared.
I'm going to give Jens a shameless plug right now. By the way, Jens is a certified high performance coach. So if you don't mind, you're not saying about, if you're looking for someone to, help you in that transition or help you with that mindset, there are lots of options out there, and Jens is absolutely amazing. So thank you, Jens. And that mindset piece, you're hearing that consistently throughout people talking. Suzy, I noticed you had unmuted yourself, so I wanted to circle back and see if you wanted to chime in.
Yeah, I just want to add one thing. So at the beginning, I was looking for support from the very, very closest people around me. So excluding my husband, my parents, my sister, my very best friends from middle school. And I didn't get it. And I was like, oh, this kind of makes me sad. I don't know what to do. If nobody else gets it, am I making the right choice? And in one of my coaching group sessions, I brought that up. I'm like, can we talk about support? And he's like, well, are you looking for support in the right places? And I think that's something that people need to remember through this journey, that we want support from the people who feel comfortable to us. But, even as Camilla mentioned and others, networking and being around like-minded people, like Jens just mentioned, is a huge part of it. And that is sometimes uncomfortable, to ask or just talk about it, the support that you may need. And so just be open to doing that, because when you open up those conversations, you find much more relief, and then you will move forward faster.
Thank you. And I think that Angel is just dropping in the chat box something that kind of ties a lot of this together. And that is, oftentimes, as Steve had mentioned, he changed as a person, and we're hearing that from other panelists. And when you're changing as a person, it shifts everything with the people around you, right? And so those people that are closest to you, like Suzy's talking about, those, besties from, that you've had for life and your closest family members, they're might not be keeping pace with all the changes that are happening in your life. So it's really critical to have that. There are feelings of displacement that are real, that do happen as you're making these transitions. And it's really important to be aware of that. Go for it, Steve.
So I've got so much to say on this topic.
Go for it.
But so I hired a coach 2017, left my job 2019. In 2013, I went to a multifamily boot camp, and it really weren't Michael Blank wasn't even around. I don't think back then. Rod Cleef wasn't around. I mean, none of these guys were there. This was just some small guy in New York. I drove 6 hours out to Long Island and attended this weekend thing, 50 people in the room. And I was pumped. And I already had a couple of properties at that point, like duplexes. I come back thinking, okay, I'm doing this. I'm leaving my job. I'm all in. And at that point, I think my wife called one of my friends and was like, hey, would you talk to Steve? So he happens to be a lawyer. We connect, like we went out and grabbed a beer or something, but he's a lawyer. His sole job is to keep people out of trouble, to keep you out of risky situations. And he 100% talked me out of it. He's like, I do a lot of real estate transactions. You're going to be up against people that are institutional level. Like there's no way you can compete against those people. You're going to get hurt. You could lose everything, right? Like he literally just laid it on me with all the best intentions. Still one of my best friends. Fantastic guy, but I listened to the wrong person. It took me 4 years to get the courage to actually do it again and follow up on my dream. So that one conversation cost me 4 years of, and can you imagine the property values in 2013 compared to when I started? Like I'd be a billionaire right now. Insane.
That's what I was going to say. Have you gone back to him and said, hey, look at all these properties I bought. Here's what I could have bought them for 4 years ago.
Yeah. Try not to do that, but it's tempting. So you have to be super careful about who you listen to. Like the second you get the slightest sense that they're not on board, you just need to stop the conversation. You don't even need to let that stuff enter your mind.
Where's the balance? Where's the balance between, because I love Jens dropped in the chat box about hidden agendas. And I completely agree with you, Jens. You never know everybody, even if they don't know they have a hidden agenda, there's always something going on. And so how do you know the difference? Or how would you say, I knew I could trust this person and I go to you for real estate advice. You've coached me on multifamily real estate, and it's been a phenomenal experience. By the way, shameless plug over here. If you're looking for a phenomenal just full on investment coach, you need to connect up with Steve. But how do you know, like, I trust you and I listen to you, and yet I won't listen to other people. How did you find the balance?
So because you hired a coach, right? So that's easy for you to be like, okay, I hired this person to make sure I'm heading down the right path. So that's easy. A lot of people won't hire that coach, or they're not ready yet, right? You do have to be ready to be coached. And so they're just talking to their friends. So I think, very few of us have more than a couple of truly supportive, amazing friends that will support you no matter what and just be happy for your success. Most people have, and it's a lot of it's subconscious. They don't want to see you succeed and end up leaving the circle of friends or making them feel their personal shame for not doing, following their dream or not doing the things that they know that they wanted to do all these years, right? There's all kinds of emotional garbage going on in everyone's mind. You need to just decipher for yourself which one of your friends have that and which ones have more of an abundant mentality where they're just happy to see you succeed. Those are the only friends you need to talk to about this, right? The other friends don't need to know what you're up to. You can still keep them as friends if you want. There's nothing wrong with that. I personally have shed a lot of friends through this process. And some of it was like, I'm sorry, I go to Africa on safaris. I'm planning a trip to Alaska right now to go fishing for a couple of weeks. I'm going to be traveling Europe for a month with my wife, slow travel, no itinerary. Like that shit is amazing. And that's what you can do in this business. But when I can't even tell most of my friends about that because they just look at me like I'm crazy, right? And then it just makes them feel bad. So those conversations don't happen a lot with certain people. And so you just need to figure out who's on board, who's not, how much can you say to certain people? It's that simple.
I love that. I'm going to give everyone, I run a book and networking club. I do lots of things. This book, The Charge, talks about the relationships that you have in your life. If you're going to make this transition, you need to get this book and you need to be reading that because you will have this displacement. It will take place. And that's not bad. There are some really great strategies in not necessarily abandoning friends, but understanding the roles that you have. Thank you, Steve, so much for
last thing.
Oh, you can do 5 things.
The shedding of a few friends, or you can only have so many people in your life, like true, like friends. If you're willing to shed a couple or just sort of let that relationship simmer down or die off, whatever, it makes room for so many more amazing people to come in. And once you're into this business, you can just tell by some of the people on this call, there's so many amazing people. And if you're willing to let them in, you'll notice right away that like you've been hanging out maybe with the wrong people, or you'll notice the difference in caliber of certain people. And you'll want more of that in your life.
Yeah, it's pretty contagious. Lisa, is there anything you'd like to chime in on, anything at all before we transition into a Q&A session?
No, I think we covered it, so we're good. Let's go into the Q&A.
Okay. I totally want to give a plug to the Level Up REI podcast. So if you, I think you might have dropped a link in the chat box already. So, at some point, make sure before you leave that you go to that chat box, hit those 3 buttons so that you can save the chat. You can go back and connect up with people, see some of the conversation that's taking place that you may have missed that might support you in what you are trying to do. And also, before we transition into, I feel like this is a commercial break, and before we transition into the Q&A session where you can ask your specific question to any of our panelists, any or all of them, I would like to invite Steve. I don't know if you wouldn't mind drop a link to your blog post that has the depreciation video. I'm going to circle back to something that Steve said way at the very beginning of this entire event. And that is, he said, I knew once I was a real estate professional that we would no longer be paying the taxes that we were paying. And if you don't mind, I think that will help a lot of people on that finance piece. So a lot of people are afraid to make this transition because they're seeing the dollars and the cents of it, and it's scary, and they allow that fear to block them from making that next step. So would you mind elaborating for our audience as to what that meant for you and your family?
Sure. So I'm not going to get into all the details on the real estate benefits, right? But there's this thing called cost seg, and it gives cost segregation, gives you massive amounts of depreciation expenses that you can't use when you have a W-2 job. When you become a full-time real estate professional, you can now use all of those expenses. So, on a deal as a GP, you might get $100,000 loss, and you can actually use that to offset, let's say, your spouse's income. So my spouse had a pretty good gig as a consultant who was making a lot of money. And I figured, I didn't have to actually replace my entire salary if I was going to be able to deduct $100,000 off of her salary and not have to pay taxes on that. Right? That starts to help quite a bit in your calculation.
So if you haven't been thinking from that perspective, make sure Steve will put it in the chat box. There's a link, this super cool little video that he created, and that has to do, breaks this down a little bit for you. So super interesting. Let's go ahead. And I just want to thank you guys are such an engaged audience. I'm so grateful for you. And I'm really grateful for these amazing panelists, the insight, the vulnerability, the transparency. If you are getting anything of value from this, you should just be celebrating it, because a lot of people are not necessarily willing to be this transparent about things. And now it's your opportunity to help them get even more vulnerable and transparent, because you can ask your questions. So feel free to drop your specific questions in the chat box, or if you'd like to raise your hand, you can use the reactions and you can click raise your hand. And we'll go back to Steve.
So there was a question earlier, and I said that we're going to cover it later. So I just want to make sure that gets addressed on insurance.
Hot question. Thank you.
Huge one for me, right? I have 3 kids. I was petrified that I'm going to take this risk, leave my job. What if one of my kids gets sick and I chose the wrong insurance, and now my kid's not covered or whatever? That scared the hell out of me. The more I looked into it, the more I realized, at least in my state, it's probably the same everywhere, my state has certain level of basic requirements for insurance to be sold here. So every insurance carrier pretty much covers everything, right? Everything that my regular company insurance was providing, my W-2 insurance. So it's pretty much an apples to apples. The only thing you're really shopping for is, do you want a massive premium with lower deductibles, or do you want low premium with massive deductibles? right? You're just trying to figure out like, what's the right balance? How often am I visiting the doctor? So you pay your $25,000 premium, right? And it might be 20,000 if you're family or not a family, whatever, but it's in that ballpark. And if you choose the right premium level or whatever, you might save $500 or $1,000 a year, right? I mean, that's pretty much all we're talking about here. It's going to cost you $25K for insurance if you have a family, right? For the most part, again, maybe different, but just plan on, put it in your budget and move on. It's nothing to stress about.
I can
Awesome.
jump in on this one too. So similar to Steve, right? I'm stressing about this. I have 5 children and I carried the health insurance for our family through the W-2. And so I did a lot of digging and trying to figure out what's going to be the best for our family, because you're right, like one hospitalization can tank you if you don't have insurance or you don't have some kind of something to cover you. So I actually I joined a health sharing company, actually, which is a nonprofit, and it's the one I joined, ultimately joined, was Christian Healthcare Ministries. And they're a health sharing company. And so that's another thing to look into. They're non-traditional. It's not the same, but they are exempt under, the Obama insurance law that you have to have a certain level of insurance. They're exempt from that because they are a nonprofit. And really it's just I pay a certain amount every month. I think for our family, it's $500 a month. And then there's certain levels that you can do, but any expense beyond a certain amount is fully shared by the company. So we pay everything up to a certain amount. And then if we ever have anything that's above that, then it's paid for by the company. So that really helped me feel much better about really large expenses. I'm happy to pay all of our small expenses, our healthcare, whatever we need, but it was the big ones that I was freaked out about.
Awesome. And there are a few things like that. Go for it,
I'll
Lisa.
add there as well. So for the people in the group that are, I guess, earlier in their journey, like if you're working for a company that has a high deductible health savings, like a health savings plan, which are typically connected to high deductible plans, you can choose to opt for the high deductible plans. If you're obviously later in your journey and you're trying to, depart in the next year or two, it's probably like, it can definitely still help you, but like it's most ideal for people who are at the beginning stages of their career to do these high deductible to the extent that you don't have like health complications, because now you can fund your health savings plan and you get help from your employer many times to do it, because they will typically fund 50% of it. So that way, of whatever you contribute. So if you contribute, essentially max it out every single year. So then if you decide to do something like what we're doing now, then you have a health savings plan, which what I do is you can also have them invested in the market, as well as you can self-direct HSA plans as well. So you could use it and invest it in real estate to the extent that you want to do that. And what I typically do is make sure that I have enough cash to cover the deductible in the plan at all times. And then the rest of the money is invested. And then as you make money from your business, you can start, those are some of the places that you can actually put money into to shelter it from taxes.
Is just genius. Thank you, Lisa. And that is something that that's what you have done, correct?
Yeah, that's what I did. And then the other item is like you purchase health insurance, and then because you're a business owner, you can then determine like how much money you think you're going to make this year. And then depending on, like, say you think you're going to make like $50,000 or $100,000 this year in income. And then you realize, like halfway through the year that you're now at 200,000, then you just go and adjust your health, like how much you're paying for your health insurance. So that way because if you, depending on how much income you have, that determines how much you pay in insurance. So it's a sliding scale. And then just as long as you're keeping track of that, either you're keeping track of it or you have an accountant that's doing that for you. But those are some of the things that can make it manageable to take this jump.
That's amazing. I mean, I told you this, the panelists were amazing, but every one of you is just like dropping this value bombs. It's fantastic. Tamika has a question, and I'm just going to open this up for, every panelist to answer. Her question is, what advice do you have for someone who is single, but still working to increase income and pay off debt to be able to get into real estate and eventually leave the W-2?
It doesn't always have to do with money. Everybody think, oh, there's a high barrier to entry because of the money you need to come. Yeah, and if you are trying to buy it with your own capital, there is a barrier of entry there. But whatever skills you have, add that, find a team that needs certain skills and see if you can add those skills to that team, and maybe somebody else can bring the money, or you get your rich uncle to finance the deal and you do all the work, right? So, if capital is a challenge, find people that has money and you can help them solve their problem of where to invest it. So get educated, figure out what it's going to take to make money, and then bring that knowledge to somebody else who doesn't have the time to get that education themselves.
Love
the
that.
other thing I would add to that too is, like, I don't know what kind of job you do, but maybe in addition to doing what Jens just recommended, definitely do that, but also to increase your income, you could decide to side hustle. Like if you or you're an accountant like myself, like you could decide to take on clients on the side. And like I have a friend that's, for instance, building a startup startup CPA business, but she works full-time as a controller, but like she has clients that she's taking care of on the side that helps her to continue to generate more income, and then also partnering with other people, as Jens mentioned.
Love it. Would anyone else like to chime in on that? All right.
Which one of the like a podcast host that people probably listen to, which one says it, but they say you need three things to put together a real estate deal, or to get in real estate. You either need money, hustle, or the expertise. And so you might just be the hustle if you don't have the money, and even if you don't have the expertise, and maybe you had a coach that's the expertise, and then you just have to go find the money. So you can just have one of those things. You don't need to have all of them or even two of them.
Love it. Thanks for adding that. Dawn had a question, and this is kind of geared towards people who have left their W-2 long enough to where it's not showing up on your taxes, and now you're a 1099er. How is that going to, have you run into any problems getting new loans after you're no longer with your W-2?
Julie, that was asked or answered like by 6 or 7 of us out there.
Was it?
If you scroll down, you'll see
Okay.
all the responses. So anybody interested in that can definitely just view that chat later.
Scroll through the chat box. Thank you, Steve. I appreciate that. Trying to wear a lot of hats here. All right. Here we go. Any advice on getting your spouse to understand the benefit of, quote, leaving your W-2 or financial independence?
Big one.
How did you get your spouse or your partner on board?
I did a vision board, and I showed things that were at the time that just seemed crazy. For example, getting a one-way ticket to Italy and just saying we're going to travel for a month without any reservations. All right. And it's just slow travel. Like, we're not going to be in a rush. It's not going to matter what's going on back here. We're going to have all the money that we need. We're not going to feel badly about spending extra for really nice hotels once in a while, like all that sort of thing. Being able to just cover our kids' college tuitions without any worry whatsoever. So I just kind of listed all that stuff out. I had some pictures on the vision board to kind of, show those things. And between that and kind of modeling out again, like, here's how I'm going to make the money to do all these crazy things. Right? This model is proven. It's already done. I've got a coach who's done it. There's lots of people just like me in the program that are doing it. Right. So kind of putting all those things together, both the vision and then the path to get there. And it didn't just help her, obviously, it helped me quite a bit to see all of that.
I love that. Sales. It's all sales. We're all selling something every moment of the day. Jens, I think you wanted to chime in.
Well, it was exactly what Steve said. Paint that vision of what that new life is going to look like, right? Yeah, there may be challenges initially and so forth, but if the vision is strong enough, we can articulate that clearly enough to see this is really worth, otherwise the path is clear. You stay in your job until you are 60, 70, 80 years old, right? That's a clear path. Everybody can follow that. And that's potentially the safe path. But if you can say, no, if we really hustle for the next 3-5 years, we can have an amazing life that we couldn't even dreamt about, right? And being able to articulate that and getting, well, you just have to figure it out for yourself first. What is that vision? And once you get super clear on it, you articulate that to your spouse, and then you can really start generating that excitement, right?
Yeah. Hey, that's a really good point, Jens. Actually, the path is clear if you're not making a choice to change it. And I did a vision board page. I had done my vision board in PowerPoint. So I just did a page that showed current path. And I'm like, so what do I get if I follow the current path? Yeah, maybe I have to work till I'm 65. Maybe I'm pushing a cart at Walmart when I'm 80 because I can't afford to retire. Maybe I have massive regrets that I didn't get to spend more time with my kids. Maybe at some point, right? I still have all my, my in-laws, my parents. We're so blessed that they're still alive and healthy. At some point, they're not going to be healthy. One of the podcasts I listened to, this woman went on and on about how, having been now transitioned into real estate, when her parents got sick, she was there every day for like months on end and never missed a moment, right? The only time she wasn't there was when she didn't want to be there. It wasn't when her boss wasn't letting her be there or when she ran out of vacation days or whatever. That stuff is so powerful.
That's really powerful even. And I can see that also the bridge that this builds if, as you are growing and progressing on this journey and your mindset is shifting and you are shifting as a person, really taking the time to have that vision together keeps you together. And then being able to see where do these paths lead and what path do we want together? Love it. Love it. Would anyone else like to chime in on that? Suzy, can I put you on the spot? Because Michael he was on board. He's like, leave. like how that's kind of the reverse side. And Jens, we'll come back to you because your wife is also, let's get this done. so let's just look at this from the flip side. Also, what do you do when your spouse wants you to go?
So at the beginning, I felt like I was like being pushed a little like into his dreams. And I was like, okay, how do I fit into this? Because he's like, oh, you'll take it all over. You can do X, Y, and Z. And I was like, okay, we're going to do all of the things, And so, I mean, it was really nice, but I guess I'd never actually even thought to ask him, like, who am I doing this for the most? Like, have we considered that aspect? Because now that I have left, there were some things I didn't consider after leaving a W-2. So I found out I really love humans. And now as an entrepreneur, as many people know, it can sometimes be really lonely. And I having to navigate some of those conversations afterwards, because when he was so excited and so for it, none of those things popped into his head, and they didn't really pop into mine until they actually happened, until I actually experienced them. So I think it's just it's really nice to have that support, but you have to almost think about it without anyone's support and be like, do I actually support myself? And do I understand what all of this means? Because even if you have 100% support, if you have any cloudy vision in yourself, then none of that support matters.
I love it. And there is so much that we don't know until we cross certain thresholds. So that provides a little window. As you are contemplating making a transition, there is a flip side. It's not all sexy. There are some lonely, painful parts that you need to be aware of as you are navigating this. And entrepreneurship is definitely not for the faint of heart. And so, there was a question that I wanted to, I'm sorry, let me slow down. Jens, your wife was just like, you got this. So, what was that like for you? How did you respond on that flip side?
I think it came from me being able to articulate a vision of what I wanted to do, because I've been working ever since I came to this country 25 years ago, right? And that was the most important thing. And when I started showing her the things that I wanted to do, she was so excited about the opportunities to meet. It's what are you waiting for? Let's do this. I can cover health insurance. I make money, so if we don't, if there's a rough time or the income is not there, we'll manage that and everything. So, I bless her heart for that, because it was like there was never any concern there, and I had a very difficult financial decision to make yesterday with a deal we were working on. It's like, oh man, you got to just pay to play and all this stuff. No worries if it doesn't go the way we're going to do it. It's like, wow, that's amazing. Thank you so much. Right. So that's been, and I guess she trusts me. She trusts that I have not let her down in other things I've done. There's always been a positive outcome of the things I'd never led her astray. So there's some trust there. Right. So maybe that's part of it as well.
Love it.
I would like, I can speak a little bit to the opposite. If the person asked that question has a spouse that's just kind of very calculated and maybe leans negative or very risk adverse, because my wife, she does trust me. I think she does, but she didn't trust me in real estate because she had no reason to trust me in real estate. And if I told her, hey, look what other people are doing, she would kind of say, well, you don't really know that. Like that, they could just be putting that out there, right? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. That's what people do. That's sales, right? That can be how sales is. So two things I would say is, one, if you do end up getting a coach or getting to a program, I would just involve your spouse in that. If and Julie, you were mentioning, you've met Hannah, and, we had a call, and that was very helpful for her to hear it from somebody else. Just because, again, I mentioned I'm a jump and build a parachute on the way down. That's really good. And then sometimes you don't get the parachute built and you hit the ground. And so that's what my wife sees happening. And that is a possibility. And I'll admit that, not, just figuratively, not literally. So she knows that. So talking to a coach would be beneficial for her, because the coach can answer some of the questions she has, and talk to the questions that she has that I don't ask, because I don't think through it as much as she does. So I think a coach or just other people in the business, can really be helpful, because again, Julie, you and your husband kind of have the reverse role. So it was more helpful for Hannah to hear from, your husband than to hear from you, frankly, because she's like, well, Julie's just another Lee. She's crazy like Lee. I want to hear from, Steve that is more like me. So I think that can be very helpful. And then I think just getting into it and starting slow, like Hannah has built up trust in me and real estate as we've gone through it. So we didn't just jump all in. We started it, and she always says time plus believable behavior equals trust. She's like, I need some time, and I need to see some believable behavior in this real estate. And so over time, she's built that up, and she said, yeah, this, I can see it working. And, I've talked to some more people that, think more like I do, and they've seen it work. And so that's given her more of trust than just trusting me, because she trusts me as her husband. But she also knows how I am, and I don't deny that. And so she can't just trust me in real estate before I've ever done anything in real estate.
Love that. Fantastic. Kim, you had a question. You had your hand up.
I do. So before, so when we started a multifamily, my husband's very supportive, right? But he does work over 40 hours a week. And so when I fully submerged myself in multifamily and learning and networking and just growing, and he's very growth oriented, but we've kind of butted heads. And I like what Steve said about, he just become a totally different person. And so now I'm finding it challenging, and I don't know if any of the women can relate, but, or if the men, if you could shed light, I feel like I might be pushing him too much or too fast or I don't want to get too far, but, so just one, thanks for being super vulnerable and sharing that, because I'm definitely feeling it actively right now. I just don't know. I mean, we've had coaches, so it's not like he's uneducated, but definitely would like to hear from either the women, if you've experienced it and how you dealt with it, or the men. What would you do if it was your wife jumping off without a parachute and, not building it until we're in the air?
So I'll jump in. I think one of the things that you have to do is you have to, so what I felt like I needed to prove both to myself and to my husband that I can make money in this business, right? That I can do things that that everybody else is doing in this business and can be successful. And that's why I chose to wait until I had at least 70% of my income replaced by my real estate activities. And I think that helped us both to feel more comfortable with me exiting the W-2 and focusing full time on real estate. And so I think you have to understand, first off, where is his comfort level? And I would talk to him about that and say, well, where is your comfort level, right? At what point would you feel comfortable with me exiting my W-2 and focusing on real estate full time? And you're going to have a lot of people that will tell you, like, you just jump ship, just do it, right? And if you're not really dedicated, that means that if you don't do it, that means you're not really dedicated. That's false. It's just not true, right? So you have to be willing to put in the extra work and the extra hours, and perhaps that's what he needs. He needs a certain level, whether it be income or time or doors or something that he will feel comfortable. And so having that kind of open and honest conversation with him might be helpful for you.
I love that. Thank you. I am looking at our time and we are at a point where we need to start wrapping up. I want to give the panelists just a brief moment to do two things. One, I'd love to know what number one element, character trait, mindset, whatever it is, however you want to answer that, do you think our audience needs in order to transition? So like the number one skill, mindset, etc. And then also tell us where you want them to connect up with you. And since Steve has food in his mouth, we're going to put him on the spot first.
You busted me. So I already pasted my contact information if you scroll pretty high above at this point, but so there's so much that's needed. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to say it's easy, right? The biggest thing is probably going to be the mindset and the vision, right? It's more the soft skills, right? You can pick up all the stuff about real estate. You can learn it all. One of the things I really find interesting is when people say you can learn how to swim by reading a book, but until you jump in the water, you're not swimming. You're not learning how to swim. Like, you know nothing until you're actually in the water swimming. So that courage, the vision of you actually making those strokes and doing the laps and being able to just survive being in the water that's over your head, if that's your biggest fear. That courage is huge, but you need to have the vision and the belief that you can do it. And some people get that through meditation, through realization, through repeating mantras in the morning, whatever it is. I've done all of those things. They were all super helpful for me. So that's where I would focus.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Lisa.
I would say resourceful. Nothing about the path ever really goes as planned. So I think that a willingness to be able to say, you know what, this wasn't a part of my plan. And what's my next best option, given the options that are available to me now? And choose again and keep choosing and know that every single thing that happens for a reason. And sometimes in the moment when you're frustrated about something not going the way you wanted or as fast as you wanted it to go, there's probably a reason why it's taking the route and the path that it's taking. And many times, if you wait long enough, you'll realize why it happened the way it did. So I think resourcefulness is huge. And the resourcefulness will enable you to stay in the game and make the pivots you need to make in order to get to the place you need to go. And sometimes the place that you thought you were going to go that was best fitted for you at the beginning of your journey isn't actually the best place for you. And you realize that from taking action and just going along the path that, hey, you know what? I'm best suited here, there, and another place. And I think that is what is also very beautiful if you choose to see it that way as well. And then you can find me, Lisa Hylton. That's Hilton with a Y, just like the hotel.com. Everything is there. My blogs, my podcasts, my freebie, which is real estate guide on real estate syndications. And if you want to get in touch with me, you just sign up and we can get on a call. Thanks, guys. Thank you, Julie, for having this.
Thank you so much, Lisa. And that's such sound advice. Resourcefulness, resilience, acceptance, they all are really strong partners together and absolutely essential if you're going to make this transition. Lee.
Sure. I like to say the 10x and then x10, like times 10. Because and I'm gonna have to say two. But like so 10x, like the Grant Cardone, I was never like really that into him, didn't read the book or anything. But I do believe you have to Steve talked about this, having a vision board, that's this huge vision. You have to think bigger. I mean, getting out of the W-2, Jen's talked about, like, everybody knows that plan. And so that feels very safe. Getting out of that, you do have to have a big vision. So whether you need a coach or you start getting around people, I think you have to have that big vision. But then kind of on the flip side, I think you have to realize that this is a long game. I think it's Rod Cleef, likes to say, this isn't a get rich quick scheme. This is a get very wealthy, but over a long period of time, for sure. Like, it's going to happen. But it's long. So I like the book, The Compound Effect, and that you got to do these little things each day. And it feels like, and I've experienced this so much because I'm a very impatient person, if you haven't been able to tell. And so I feel like, you can go be doing things for months and it feels like nothing's happening, because especially if you're in multifamily, you haven't taken down an apartment building. So I've been working at this for 6 months. I have no apartment buildings. I've done nothing. And you have to just keep reminding yourselves that you've built up so much momentum. You've done so many things as long as you've been working that whole time. And someday you're going to get a 50-unit apartment building, and then you're going to go from 0 to 50 in one day, but it's because of what you've done over the past 6 to 7 months. So you make all that persistence or whatever, but I think it's just it's a long sales cycle in multifamily especially. So you got to get your mind wrapped around that you're going to do things and do work for a really long time and feel like you have nothing to show for it. But then it's going to happen all of a sudden, and you're really going to experience all the momentum that you've built up. So you just got to get that in your mind, have that big vision, but realize it's going to take a long time to get there. If you want to know more about me or connect, I'd love to. I'll throw in the chat again, my website, email, and make my LinkedIn profile and all that.
Fantastic. Thank you. I'm sorry, I am such a stickler for time, but I'm not going to short our last 3 amazing panelists. So I'm sorry if you are in a position where you do need to drop off. I will send out a recording, but I want to definitely give space for these final 3 amazing panelists. So Suzy, final things people need.
So I would have to say, to get rid of your limiting beliefs, right? Because I live in a different country and I invest like over 4,000 miles away, and I started my entire journey during COVID. So if I can do it, I promise all of you can do it in the States or any country at a matter of that. And through that, it was just, a lot of it was affirmations and meditation, but then with that comes consistency. So what Lee was talking about, right? Like that 1% every day, you become a more confident person, and those limiting beliefs will also slowly go away. And you learn so much with consistency, even if it's 30 minutes one day or 15 one day, it all makes a huge difference, because everything just compounds on top over and over and over again. And then the last one, which all ties together, is celebrating wins. And so we think of wins as taking down a deal, but there are so many wins in between there. And that's what will keep you consistent and keep those limiting beliefs from coming back into the foreground. So I know 3 things is kind of a lot to do, but I swear they all mix together like a really great hug. Really.
Suzy, those are fantastic. Where can people find you? Did you already drop everything in the chat box?
Yeah, and I'll drop it again.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. Camilla.
So one of my daughters has a shirt that she wore that says, "Believe in your selfie." It's very cute, but it's so true, right? Having belief in yourself is one of the most important things in this business. And even when that belief is shaky, right? You still have to have it, down deep. And I've experienced this, right? So down deep inside of myself, I know I can achieve really great things, and I can go out there and I can, I can be this high performer. But there are times when you feel shaky in that. And I had an experience the other day that I looked back at an accomplishment I made, and I was surprised. And I was surprised that I hit this accomplishment. And I was like, well, why am I surprised by that? Because I believe in myself, right? But you go through ups and downs. And as an entrepreneur, there's lots of ups and downs, but keep that deep down belief in yourself, that, you can put one foot in front of the other. And whenever I'm on podcasts, people ask me, what's my superpower? My superpower is living just barely outside my comfort zone at all times. Not 10x outside. I'm not a 10xer. I am a 1xer. And I live just barely outside my comfort zone at all times. And I'm trying constantly, daily, trying to stretch and grow. And all that stretching and that growth really gets me to where I am today, and is the runway to where I'm going to be in 5, 10, 15 years. So that's my advice. Just keep going.
Love it. Thank you so much, Camilla. And if you wouldn't mind, I'm sure you've already put it in the chat box, but just drop your contact info so it's nice and fresh. And Jens, let's wrap it up.
All right, let's leave this on a high note. So I think everybody talked about believe in yourself. You can do it. The mindset, there's no question that's number one, but also don't think you can do it all yourself. Make sure you find partners, make sure you find people to do it with. I had that limiting belief early on, like I am smart enough, I can figure it out. It held me back. Once I started partnering, once I started meeting people, Steve has been a huge influence on me for my success. And once I saw what it would meant to partner with people, everything just exploded. Find partners day one, that's going to really take you off. So that's all I wanted to share. I appreciate everybody. So it's been amazing. Thanks, Julie.
Wow. I just want to say thank you again for everyone. So many of you just stuck around. Our numbers are just you guys are definitely invested in this conversation. It's an important conversation to have. Someone asked me, yes, I will send out the replay of this, because maybe you have a friend, a partner, a spouse, someone that that would be helpful to, watch this again and have a conversations. I will also post it onto my YouTube channel so that it is there under the learning section. And there are links in the chat thread there. But I just want to thank you, Steve, Lee, Jens, Suzy, Lisa, and Camilla. I appreciate your time. And I just genuinely appreciate you as human beings and amazing inspirations in my life and so many other lives. So thanks for being you, and thanks for your time today.
Thanks, Julie.
Thanks, everyone.
Right.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks, Lisa.
Make sure you save that.
Julie and everybody.
Yeah, and make sure you save that chat thread before you leave. And I'm going to close this out in 5 seconds. So you better hustle.
Bye.